At our anniversary party, my best friend's 3-year-old toddler looked at my husband and said, "Daddy, can we go home now?" The room went silent, the glass slipped from my hand. And so did everything I thought I knew. All the guests turned to stare at me. What I did next made them regret everything. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. The champagne glass slipped from my fingers, just like my entire world was slipping away. I remember the sound it made, a sharp, crystalline crack against the marble floor of our anniversary party. Crystal shards scattered everywhere, and in each tiny piece, I could see a reflection of the lies I'd been living for 3 years. The lies I never even knew existed until that very moment. I stood frozen in the doorway of our dining room. Just frozen. I was watching my husband of 7 years, Garrett, kneel down to comfort my best friend's crying toddler. It was a sweet scene, the kind of thing that would normally make my heart melt. The kind of thing that had made me love him for all these years. But the child's next words, those words would shatter everything. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and the people I trusted most in this world. "Daddy, can we go home now?" Little Delia whispered it. Her tiny 3-year-old arms reached up to wrap around my husband's neck with the kind of easy familiarity that comes from 1,000 bedtime stories. 1,000 goodnight kisses I had never witnessed. The room, which had been buzzing with the happy chatter of our closest friends, fell completely silent. I could feel 20 pairs of eyes turn to stare, first at the sound of the little girl's voice, and then at the sound of my glass shattering on the floor. My best friend, Marin, went pale as death. She looked like she was about to be sick right there on my expensive Persian rug. And my husband, my loving, devoted Garrett, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. But I was the one who felt like I was dying. Just 3 hours earlier, I had been the happiest woman alive. Truly. Our 7th wedding anniversary party was perfect, exactly as I'd planned it, down to the last detail. I've always been a planner, you see. I like things to be just so. White roses everywhere, their scent filling our beautiful home. A soft jazz trio playing in the corner. Our closest friends and family, all gathered to celebrate what I believed with every fiber of my being was an unbreakable love. I wore the emerald green dress that made my eyes sparkle, the one Garrett always said was his favorite. He'd picked it out for me on a trip to the city a few years back. "It matches your eyes, Audrey," he'd said, his voice soft. "It makes them look like jewels." My dark hair was swept up in an elegant bun, a few tendrils escaping to frame my face. I felt radiant. I felt cherished. After 7 years of marriage, 7 years of building a life together, I still got butterflies when he looked at me from across a crowded room. "You look absolutely stunning tonight," my sister, Corinne, whispered as she helped me arrange the dessert table. The cake was a 3-tiered masterpiece, lemon with raspberry filling, our wedding flavor. "I swear, you and Garrett still act like newlyweds." I smiled, my heart so full it felt like it could burst. "I'm the luckiest woman in the world," I told her, and I believed it. Oh, how I believed it. If only I had known how wrong I was. Garrett moved through the party like the perfect host he always was. He was a successful architect, you know. Tall, handsome, with these kind brown eyes that had captured my heart back in college. He had a way of making everyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. He was charming, attentive, making sure everyone's glass was full, laughing at their jokes. Everyone loved him. Especially me. Speech. It was Nolan, his business partner, raising his wine glass. Garrett laughed and pulled me close, his arm warm and solid around my waist. It felt like home. All right, he said, his voice carrying easily through the room. He cleared his throat as everyone quieted down. 7 years ago, he began, his eyes finding mine, I married my best friend, my soulmate, my everything. He paused, and I felt my own eyes start to well up. Audrey, you've made every day of my life better just by being in it. You are my rock, my inspiration, my home. The guests clapped as he leaned in and kissed my cheek. I felt tears of pure joy prick my eyes. This was my life. This perfect, wonderful man was my husband. Here's to 7 more years, he continued, raising his glass high. And 70 after that. Everyone cheered and drank. I pressed myself closer to him, breathing in his familiar cologne, a scent of sandalwood and something clean, like fresh linen. I felt safe. I felt loved. I felt complete. That's when Marin appeared at my elbow, with 3-year-old Delia balanced on her hip. Marin. My best friend since high school. We'd been through everything together, awkward teenage years, first heartbreaks, college exams, my wedding. When her ex left her high and dry the moment she told him she was pregnant, I was the one who held her while she cried. I was the one who drove her to doctor's appointments and helped her build the crib. She looked tired tonight, with dark circles under her eyes, but she was still beautiful. She'd been a single mom for 3 years, and I'd been trying to help her as much as I possibly could. I loved Delia like she was my own niece. I'd babysit whenever Marin needed a break, I'd bring them groceries when I knew money was tight for her. I was her support system. That's what best friends do, right? This party is incredible, Audrey, Marin said, bouncing Delia gently on her hip. You really outdid yourself. I wanted it to be perfect, I replied, reaching out to tickle Delia's chin. The little girl giggled and hid her face in her mother's shoulder. She had these big, brown eyes, just like, well, I never thought about who they were just like. Mama, I'm sleepy, Delia whined, her little voice muffled. I know, baby. We'll go home soon, Marin soothed. An idea popped into my head. It was the most natural thing in the world. Why don't you put her down in the guest room? I suggested. She can nap until you're ready to leave. No need to rush off. Marin hesitated for a second. Just a flicker. Are you sure? I don't want to impose. Don't be silly, I insisted, waving her concern away. Delia is always welcome here. You know that. I watched Marin carry Delia upstairs, and a familiar ache settled in my chest. Garrett and I had been trying for children for 2 years. 2 long, frustrating years of temperature charts, ovulation kits, and doctor's appointments. The specialist said there was nothing physically wrong with either of us. Sometimes these things just take time, they'd say with a comforting, professional smile. But watching Marin with Delia, seeing that easy, maternal love, it always made my heart ache with a deep, painful longing. A longing for a child of my own. A child with Garrett. The party continued beautifully. Our friends shared funny stories about us from college. My parents embarrassed me with a slideshow of childhood photos, including one of me with a terrible perm. Garrett's mother gave a touching speech about how happy I'd made her son, and how she couldn't have wished for a better daughter-in-law. It was all so perfect. A perfect celebration of a perfect life. Around 10 o'clock, people started to leave. I was in the kitchen, wrapping up some of the leftover anniversary cake, when I heard Delia crying upstairs. The poor thing was probably confused, waking up in a strange place. I'll go check on her, Garrett called out from the living room, already heading for the stairs before I could even respond. He was always so good with her. So thoughtful. I continued cleaning up, humming softly to myself. The party had been everything I'd dreamed of. I was already mentally planning what we'd do for our 10th anniversary. Maybe a trip to Italy, back to where we had our honeymoon. That's when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Garrett's heavy tread, and lighter, quicker ones behind him. Marin must have gone up to get Delia. I walked toward the dining room to say goodbye, still smiling, still glowing with a happiness that felt like it would last forever. And then my world exploded. Delia was crying, but not the tired, fussy crying from before. This was a desperate, wanting cry. She was reaching for Garrett, her little arms outstretched. "Daddy, can we go home now?" The word. That one, single word. Daddy. Not Uncle Garrett. Not Mama's friend. Daddy. It hit me like a physical blow. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I just watched in what felt like slow motion as the remaining faces in the room turned toward the sound of shattering glass. My champagne flute lay in 1,000 glittering pieces at my feet, but I couldn't feel the tiny cuts on my ankles. I couldn't feel anything except the crushing, suffocating weight of an impossible betrayal. Garrett's face went white. Maren looked like she might actually faint. Delia kept crying, confused by the sudden, terrible tension that had filled the room. "Audrey," Garrett started, his voice shaking. But I couldn't hear him over the roaring in my ears. It was like the ocean was inside my head. 3 years old. Delia was 3 years old. My mind, suddenly sharp and cold, did the math with a brutal, crystal clarity. Garrett and I had been trying to have a baby for 2 years. Delia was 3, which meant she was conceived 4 years ago. 4 years ago. When Garrett had gone through what he called his quarter-life crisis. When he'd been distant and moody and claimed he needed space to figure things out. When he'd started working late and going out with his friends more often. When, I now realized, he'd been sleeping with my best friend. "Get out." The words came out as a whisper, but they cut through the silence like a knife. "Audrey, please, let me explain." Garrett stepped toward me, his hands held out as if to calm a wild animal. "Get out!" I screamed at this time, my voice breaking, shattering just like the glass on the floor. "All of you! Get out of my house!" The remaining guests scattered like startled birds. My sister, Corinne, tried to approach me, her face a mask of concern, but I held up a shaking hand to stop her. "Not you, Corinne. Everyone else. Now." Garrett looked like he wanted to say something, anything, but Maren, her face ashen, grabbed his arm. "We should go," she whispered urgently. They left together. My husband and my best friend, carrying the child that proved their betrayal had been going on for years. The child that should have been mine. I stood alone in my beautiful dining room, surrounded by the remnants of what I'd thought was a perfect marriage, and I felt something cold and hard and heavy settle in my chest where my heart used to be. They thought they could fool me. They thought they could keep their dirty little secret forever, playing happy family behind my back while I played the devoted wife and the supportive friend. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated me. As I bent down and began to sweep up the broken glass with trembling hands, my mind was already working. Planning. Calculating. They wanted to destroy my life. Fine. But I would make damn sure they paid for every lie, every betrayal, every single moment of happiness they had stolen from me. The game was just beginning. And I intended to win. The house felt like a tomb after everyone left. The silence was deafening, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. I sat on my living room floor, still in my beautiful anniversary dress, surrounded by empty wine glasses and crumpled napkins. I was trying to process what had just happened. Trying to make it real. Daddy. The word just kept echoing in my head, over and over, like a broken record. Amanda called Garrett Daddy. With shaking fingers, I pulled out my phone and opened my photo gallery. There were hundreds of pictures from the past 3 years. Family gatherings, birthday parties, casual dinners where Maren and Delia had joined us. It was all there, a documented history of my own blindness. I scrolled through them with new, horrified eyes, looking for the clues I had so obviously missed. And now, they were everywhere. There, Garrett's hand lingering a little too long on Maren's shoulder at Delia's second birthday party. Here, his gentle, knowing smile as he helped Delia blow out her candles, a smile I had mistaken for avuncular affection. There was another one, a picture from a summer barbecue. I was at the grill, and in the background, Garrett was crouched down, retying Delia's tiny sneaker, looking up at Marin with an expression I couldn't decipher then, but was horrifyingly clear now. It was intimacy. It was shared history. The way he always seemed to know exactly what Delia needed before Marin even asked. A juice box. Her favorite blanket. A tissue for her runny nose. How had I been so blind? How had I looked at all of this and seen nothing but a good husband being a good friend? My phone buzzed, making me jump. A text from Garrett. Please let me come home. We need to talk. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Home. He had the nerve to call this place home. But he had another home now, didn't he? A secret one. With Marin and Delia. With his real family. My thumbs felt like lead as I typed back. Don't. I need time to think. Another buzz, almost instantly. I love you, Audrey. Please don't give up on us. I almost laughed. A bitter, ugly sound filled the empty room. He loved me. He loved me so much that he'd been living a double life for years. He loved me so much that he'd let me believe I was his whole world while he was busy building another one right behind my back. He loved me so much he had a child with my best friend. I couldn't stand it anymore. I turned off my phone and walked upstairs to our bedroom. Our bedroom. Everything looked the same. Our wedding photo on the nightstand, us, so young and happy, smiling without a care in the world. Garrett's clothes were still in the closet, his book was on his side of the bed, face down, marking his page. But it all felt like props in a play. A sick, twisted play I'd been unknowingly performing in for years. I don't know what I was looking for. Evidence. Proof. Something tangible to hold onto in this nightmare. I opened his nightstand drawer. Inside was his passport, some old receipts, a half-empty bottle of aspirin, and a small, dark blue velvet box I had never seen before. It wasn't the kind of box for a ring. It was smaller, flatter. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of white satin, was a delicate silver bracelet. A little girl's bracelet. There was a tiny charm hanging from it, the letter D. Delia's bracelet. The receipt was still in the box, tucked underneath the satin. Purchased 3 months ago from an expensive jewelry store downtown. The date on it made my stomach clench. It was the same week Garrett had told me he was working late every night on a big project, that the deadline was killing him. He'd been too tired for our usual date night. Too busy to talk. He hadn't been buying blueprints, he'd been buying gifts for his daughter. While I was at home, planning our anniversary party, dreaming of the children we would have together someday, he was out buying jewelry for the child he already had. I sank onto the edge of the bed, clutching the little bracelet in my hand. The cold silver felt like it was burning my skin. And the tears came then. Hot, angry tears that felt like they might never stop. I cried for the marriage I thought I had. I cried for the friend I thought I could trust. I cried for the naive, stupid woman who'd actually believed in happily ever after. But underneath the grief, something else was growing. Something cold and calculating and absolutely furious. They had played me for a fool. For years, they had looked me in the eye and lied. Every single day. They had let me babysit their child. They had let me bring them groceries. They had let me offer emotional support to Marin, the struggling single mother. The humiliation burned worse than the betrayal. How many people knew? How many of our friends had been in on the secret? Had they all been laughing at me behind my back? My mind raced, replaying every interaction, every shared glance I'd never understood. Every time Garrett had cancelled plans at the last minute because of a work emergency. Every weekend he claimed he needed to go help Marin with something around her apartment, a leaky faucet, a shelf that needed hanging. He hadn't been helping her fix her plumbing. He'd been playing house with his secret family. My phone, which I'd turned back on in a moment of weakness, buzzed again. This time it was Marin. Audrey, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to find out this way. Can we please talk? I stared at her message, and all I could see was her face, streaked with tears, crying on my shoulder about how hard it was to be alone. All the time she'd thanked me for being such a good friend, for always being there for her and Delia. She wasn't sorry she did it. She was sorry she got caught. I typed back, my fingers flying across the screen. There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice 4 years ago. Her response came immediately. It's not what you think. It's complicated. Complicated. As if there was some explanation that could possibly make this okay. As if there was some version of this story where they weren't the villains and I wasn't the victim. But I was done being the victim. I walked into my home office and opened my laptop. The screen illuminated my face in the dark room. If they wanted to play games, fine. I could play games, too. But I was going to play to win. Garrett was a successful architect with a reputation to protect. Marin worked as a marketing coordinator for a family-friendly non-profit organization. They both had these carefully constructed lives that depended on people seeing them as good, moral, trustworthy individuals. What would happen if those carefully constructed lives came crashing down? I opened a new document. I started making lists. Garrett's clients. His business partners. His professional associations. Marin's coworkers. Her boss. The board members of her nonprofit. Our mutual friends. Our families. Our social circles. Everyone who needed to know the truth about who they really were. But I had to be smart about this. Calculated. Methodical. If I was going to destroy them, I needed to do it right. I needed evidence. Documentation. Proof that couldn't be denied or explained away as the ramblings of a scorned wife. I typed a title at the top of the blank page. Project Payback. Then, I started planning their downfall. I didn't sleep that night. Not a single wink. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, the remnants of the party cleared away, with a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago, and I made plans. The raw, screaming grief had subsided, replaced by an icy, methodical rage. The first thing I needed was proof. Real, undeniable, legally admissible evidence of their affair and Delia's parentage. Without that, it would just be my word against theirs. They could spin it as a misunderstanding, a child's fantasy, or worse, a jealous wife's delusion. I wouldn't let that happen. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the first rays of sun slanting through the kitchen window, I called my lawyer, Ms. Bennett. She wasn't just any lawyer, she'd handled our house purchase and our wills. She was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 50s who didn't suffer fools gladly. I knew she was the one I needed. Audrey, it's awfully early, her voice was gravelly with sleep, but alert. Is everything all right? I need to see you today, Ms. Bennett. It's urgent. There was a pause on the line. Of course. Can you be here at 9? Ms. Bennett's office was downtown, in one of those tall glass buildings that scream success. The inside was all dark wood and leather chairs that smelled like money and confidence. She took one look at my face, I'm sure I looked like hell, my eyes red and swollen, and wordlessly poured me a cup of strong, black coffee from the carafe on her desk. Tell me everything, she said simply, her pen poised over a yellow legal pad. So I did. I laid out the whole sordid story. The anniversary party. Delia's words. The bracelet. The 4 years of lies. I tried to keep my voice steady, to present the facts without breaking down. Ms. Bennett listened without interruption, her expression unreadable, just taking precise notes in her neat handwriting. I want a divorce, I finished, my voice finally cracking on the last word. And I want to make sure Garrett doesn't get a penny more than he's legally entitled to. In fact, I want to make sure he gets less. Ms. Bennet leaned back in her high-backed leather chair, tapping her pen against her chin. First things first, she said, her voice calm and authoritative. We need to establish paternity. Without that, this is all just speculation in the eyes of the court. How do we do that? DNA test. But we'll need a sample from Delia, and that's going to be tricky if Marin doesn't cooperate. Which I highly doubt she will. I thought about that for a moment. My mind was racing. What if I could get something with Delia's DNA on it? A cup she drank from, a toy she played with? She left a hairbrush here once. Possible, Ms. Bennet conceded, but the chain of custody would be questionable in court. He could argue you tampered with it. It's always better if we can do this officially, compelled by a court order. She made another note. There's another issue here, Audrey, she continued, her eyes sharp. A much more serious one for him. If Garrett is Delia's father, he has been avoiding his legal child support obligations for 3 years. That's not just a moral failing, it's a legal matter that could have very serious consequences for him, especially regarding his professional license as an architect. A spark of something dark and satisfying warmed my cold chest. What kind of consequences? Wage garnishment, asset seizure, liens on his property, and depending on the amount owed, possible jail time. And, she added, looking at me pointedly, if it can be proven that he has been deliberately hiding his paternity to avoid those support obligations, that's fraud. Criminal fraud. Good, I said, and I meant it. The word felt solid and real in my mouth. Ms. Bennet raised an eyebrow. Audrey, I understand you're angry. You have every right to be. But we need to be strategic here. If you come across as vindictive in the divorce proceedings, it could hurt you. The judge might see it as you trying to punish him, not just seek a fair settlement. I met her gaze, my own expression hardening. I'm not vindictive, Ms. Bennet, I replied calmly. I'm thorough. After leaving her office, my head swimming with legal strategies and a renewed sense of purpose, I drove to Garrett's architectural firm. I'd been there dozens of times over the years. Company Christmas parties, bringing him lunch on days he was swamped, picking him up for dinner dates. The receptionist, Monica, a sweet woman with a perpetually cheerful smile, knew me well. Mrs. Hayes. How lovely to see you, she chirped as I walked in. Garrett's in a meeting right now, but I can let him know you're here. Actually, Monica, I'm here to see you, I said, summoning the brightest, most convincing smile I could manage. My cheeks ached from the effort. Oh. I'm planning a surprise party for Garrett's birthday next month, I said, leaning conspiratorially over the reception desk. And I need to check his schedule to make sure I pick the right date. You know how he is with his deadlines. Monica beamed, completely taken in. Oh, how wonderful. He's so lucky to have you. If only she knew. Could you possibly print out his calendar for the past few months? I want to make sure I avoid any important client meetings or deadlines he might have coming up. Of course, she said, already clicking away on her computer. Should I go back to January? Actually, I said, thinking fast, could you go back further? Maybe to this time last year? I want to see the pattern of his busy seasons, to make sure I don't plan it during another crunch time. It was a plausible lie. As Monica's printer whirred to life, spitting out months and months of Garrett's carefully documented schedule, I felt like a detective gathering evidence for a trial. Every late meeting, every weekend site visit, every business trip would now be scrutinized, cross-referenced with the lies he had told me. Here you go, Monica said, handing me a thick stack of papers. I hope the party is wonderful. Oh, it will be, I assured her, my voice laced with an irony only I could understand. It will be absolutely unforgettable. My next stop was Marin's apartment complex. I'd been there countless times, bringing over pizza for a girls' night in, helping her assemble IKEA furniture. But now I was looking at it with different eyes. It was a nice place, 2 bedrooms in a good neighborhood. A little too nice for someone on a non-profit salary with no child support coming in. The rent alone must have been a huge strain. Or maybe it wasn't. I parked across the street and waited. At 11:30, just as I expected, Maren emerged with Delia, heading toward her car. I followed at a distance as they drove to a pediatrician's office a few miles away. A routine checkup, probably. While they were inside, an idea, a long shot, came to me. I called the office from my cell phone, altering my voice slightly, making it a bit higher, a bit more rushed. "Hi, this is Amanda's aunt," I said to the receptionist who answered. "I'm updating our family medical records for our insurance, and I just need to confirm the father's name you have on file for her." "I'm sorry, ma'am, but due to privacy laws, I can't give out patient information over the phone." Her voice was polite but firm. "Oh, of course, I completely understand," I said quickly. "Could you just confirm if the father's name on file starts with a G? I just want to make sure we have the right paperwork here. It's all so confusing." There was a pause. I held my breath. "Ma'am, as I said, you'll need to come into the office with proper identification and a signed authorization from the child's mother to access any medical records." I hung up, frustrated, but not surprised. Medical records were heavily protected for good reason. I would have to find another way. I followed them from the doctor's office to a small park. Delia ran straight to the playground, squealing with delight, while Maren sat on a bench, looking exhausted and staring into space. I watched from my car, parked under the shade of a large oak tree. I watched Delia climb the slide and swing on the swings. And I saw it then, so clearly it was like a punch to the gut. She had Garrett's eyes. The same shape, the same shade of warm brown. How had I never noticed that before? My phone rang, startling me. Garrett's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, my heart pounding in my chest. A moment later, I listened to his message. His voice was strained, tired. "Audrey, please. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But we need to talk about this like adults. I'm coming home tonight, whether you want me to or not. This is my house, too. His house. Our house. The house we had bought together with dreams of filling it with children. Our children. Children that he'd already had with someone else." I drove home and spent the rest of the afternoon going through our financial records. Bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts, everything I could find in the filing cabinet in our office. Ms. Bennett was right. I needed to be thorough. And what I found made my blood boil. It wasn't one big thing. It was 1,000 little cuts. A pattern of deception stretching back for years. Cash withdrawals, always from ATMs near Maren's apartment, that coincided with Delia's birthday and Christmas. Charges at expensive toy stores and children's clothing shops that Garrett had explained away as gifts for Nolan's kids. And then I found it. The smoking gun. A recurring monthly payment, sent electronically to something called Sunshine Daycare. I had never questioned it. Garrett handled most of our finances, he was better with numbers, he'd always said. He was an architect, after all. I had trusted him. He had been supporting his secret family with our money. My money. Money from the joint account that my salary helped fund. The salary from my marketing job, the money I worked hard for. I printed everything. Every statement, every charge, every withdrawal. I organized it all into neat, labeled folders. Evidence of financial deception. Proof of double life. At 6 o'clock, I heard his key in the front door. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the folders spread out before me like a declaration of war, when he walked in. He looked terrible. Unshaven, his clothes wrinkled from the day before, dark circles under his eyes. "Audrey," he said softly. "Thank you for letting me come home." "This isn't your home anymore," I replied, my voice flat. I didn't look up from the bank statements in front of me. "I'm just letting you get your things." He sat down across from me, the heavy oak table feeling like a courtroom bench between us. He reached for my hand, but I pulled it away as if his touch was poison. "Please," he begged, his voice cracking. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" I finally looked up at him, and I saw him physically recoil from whatever he saw in my eyes. "Explain that you've been cheating on me for 4 years? That you have a daughter you never told me about? Or that you've been stealing from our joint account to support your other family?" Garrett flinched as if I'd slapped him. "It's not stealing. It's my money, too." "Is it?" I let a cold, dead smile touch my lips. "I've been doing some math, Garrett. Some very interesting math." I slid a single sheet of paper across the table toward him. A spreadsheet I'd created. "This is a conservative estimate of how much you've spent on Marin and Delia over the past 3 years. Daycare, clothes, toys, cash withdrawals, probably helping with her rent. Want to guess what the total is?" He glanced at the paper and all the color drained from his face. $47,000, I continued, my voice deadly calm. Money that came out of our joint account. Money that I helped earn. Money that you spent on your secret family while telling me we needed to be careful with our finances because we were saving for our future. For our fertility treatments. For our future children's college fund. "Audrey," he whispered, his head in his hands. "I'm not finished." My voice was ice. "I also found the jewelry receipt. The bracelet you bought for Delia. A very expensive bracelet. It was purchased the same week you told me we couldn't afford to go on vacation this year because business was slow." Garrett buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. "I never meant for this to happen." "Which part?" I shot back, relentless. "The affair? Getting her pregnant? Lying to me for 4 years? Or getting caught?" "All of it," he whispered into his palms. He looked up at me then, his kind brown eyes, the eyes I had fallen in love with, now filled with tears. "I love you, Audrey. I've always loved you." I laughed. The sound was bitter and ugly, even to my own ears. "You have a funny way of showing it." "It started as a mistake," he said desperately, leaning forward. "A terrible mistake. Marin and I, we were both going through rough patches. You and I were fighting all the time about having kids, the pressure was enormous, and she was so lonely after her ex left. It was just supposed to be one night. One stupid, drunken night. But it wasn't, was it, Garrett?" "No," he shook his head, looking defeated. "And when she told me she was pregnant," he looked up at me, his eyes pleading for some kind of understanding I was incapable of giving. "I wanted to tell you. God, Audrey, I wanted to tell you so many times. I tried to end it, but then there was Delia, she's my daughter. I couldn't just abandon her. So you abandoned me instead." "I never abandoned you. I stayed. I chose you," he cried, his voice rising. "You chose to lie to me," I corrected, my voice dropping back to that dangerous calm. "You chose to let me believe I was your wife when really, I was just your cover story. You chose to let me babysit your daughter while pretending to be her adoring aunt. You chose to let me support my best friend through her difficult single motherhood while you were the missing father all along. I'm sorry," he choked out, the tears finally falling. "I'm so sorry, Audrey. I know I don't deserve it, but please, can you forgive me? Can we try to work through this? Go to counseling?" I stared at him for a long, silent moment. This man I had loved for more than a decade. This man I had trusted with my heart, my future, my dreams. And I felt nothing. The love had been burned out of me, leaving only ashes and ice. No, I said simply. Audrey, please. I want you out of this house by tomorrow night. Take whatever you need, your clothes, your personal items. But don't take anything that's mine. I've already changed the locks on my office and the safe. He stared at me, bewildered. You can't just kick me out. This is my house, too. My name is on the deed. Actually, I can. I slid another paper across the table. It was Ms. Bennett's business card. I called my lawyer today, Garrett. Did you know that in this state, adultery has a significant impact on property division in a divorce? Especially when there's proven financial deception involved. It's called dissipation of marital assets. His face went white. You're divorcing me. I'm destroying you, I corrected him softly. There's a difference. He stared at me as if he had never seen me before. This isn't you, Audrey. You're not vindictive. You're kind and forgiving, and stupid, I finished for him. Apparently, stupid enough to believe your lies for 4 years. But I'm not stupid anymore. I stood up, gathering my papers into a neat stack. What are you going to do? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. I smiled, and it felt like stretching ice across my face. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who you really are. Your clients, your business partner Nolan, your family, everyone who thinks you're such a good, honest man. His eyes widened in horror. You'll ruin my career. You should have thought of that before you decided to ruin my life. I walked toward the stairs, then paused and turned back to look at him, a broken man sitting at my kitchen table. Oh, and Garrett? I said, my voice sweet as poison. You might want to call a lawyer. Because when the state finds out you've been avoiding child support for 3 years, you're going to need one. I left him sitting there, surrounded by the evidence of his betrayal, and went upstairs to pack his bags. The war had officially begun. Garrett was gone by the next evening, just as I demanded. He didn't fight. He didn't argue. He packed his clothes and personal items with the defeated air of a man who knew he'd already lost. I watched from the upstairs window as he loaded boxes into the trunk of his car, and I felt nothing but a cold, hard satisfaction. The love was gone, the grief was gone, all that remained was the mission. He tried one last time to talk to me, standing in the doorway with tears in his eyes, looking pathetic. I know you hate me right now, he'd said, his voice thick. But someday, when you're not so angry, maybe you'll remember that we were happy once. Maybe you'll remember that I did love you. The only thing I'll remember, I'd replied, my voice devoid of any emotion, is that you're a liar and a cheat. Everything else was just an act. I closed the door in his face and slid the deadbolt home. The sound was final. Now, the house was mine again. It was silent and clean and finally free of his presence. I walked through the rooms, reclaiming my space, touching the furniture, breathing in the air that no longer held the scent of his cologne. And I planned my next moves. Ms. Bennett had filed the divorce papers that morning. Garrett would be served at his office the next day, in front of his colleagues, and hopefully, in front of a client. I had specifically requested that timing. But the divorce, as I told him, was just the beginning. I'd spent the day making phone calls, sending emails, planting the seeds that would soon grow into the complete and utter destruction of his professional life. It was amazing how quickly people turned on someone they trusted when they learned the truth. My first call had been to Garrett's biggest client, Giovanni Development Corporation. The irony of the name wasn't lost on me. They were a family-owned company, building a massive family-friendly resort, and their lead architect had been hiding his own secret family for years. I asked to speak directly to the president, Mr. Giovanni. Mr. Giovanni, I'd said, my voice calm and professional. My name is Audrey Hayes. My husband, Garrett Hayes, is your lead architect. I thought you should know, as a matter of professional integrity, that my husband has been living a double life. He has a 3-year-old daughter he has never publicly acknowledged, and I have discovered he has been misappropriating our marital assets to support his secret family. I have documentation to prove it. The silence on the other end of the line had been deafening. Mrs. Hayes, he finally said, his voice heavy. These are very serious accusations. I know, I'd assured him. I have bank records, receipts, photographs. I'm filing for divorce on the grounds of adultery and financial fraud. I simply thought you'd want to know what kind of man is representing your family-focused brand before this becomes public knowledge. By the end of the day, I got a call from a friend who worked at the firm. Giovanni Development had called an emergency meeting to review Garrett's contract. The first domino had fallen. My second call had been to the state's Child Support Enforcement Agency. I provided them with Delia's full name, Marin's address, and all of Garrett's employment and financial information. I was methodical. I was thorough. We will begin an investigation immediately, the caseworker on the phone had told me, her voice clipped and efficient. If paternity is established and he has been avoiding his support obligations, we can pursue back support plus interest and penalties. We can also garnish wages and seize assets to ensure payment. How long does that usually take? I'd asked. Once we have DNA confirmation, we move fast, Mrs. Hayes. The state of this fine union doesn't like deadbeat dads. Perfect. My third call had been to Heather's boss at the nonprofit, Families First. Again, the irony. I had been more subtle there. I couldn't make direct accusations without proof she knew he was married, though I knew she did. So, I played the part of a concerned acquaintance. I expressed my deep sadness and concern about Marin's personal situation and how it might affect her ability to represent an organization focused on family values. I just think you should be aware, I'd said carefully, my voice full of fake sympathy, that Marin has been involved in a long-term, very messy affair with a married man, and it's about to become a very public, very ugly divorce. There's a child involved. I'm not sure that aligns with your organization's mission. I would hate for your donors to find out through the gossip columns. The conversation had been brief, but I could hear the alarm bells ringing in her boss's voice. Nonprofits lived and died by their reputations. Any hint of scandal, especially one involving adultery and a secret child, could cost them thousands in donations and funding. The second domino was teetering. Now, I was preparing for phase 2 of my plan. I had invited our entire social circle to a dinner party this weekend. All the friends who had been at our anniversary celebration, plus a few others who needed to hear the story. The invitation, sent by email, had been carefully worded. Please join me for an intimate dinner party this Saturday as I share some important news about recent changes in my life. Your friendship and support mean everything to me during this difficult time. Everyone had accepted. Of course they had. They were curious. They were concerned. They were eager to help their poor friend Audrey through whatever crisis she was facing. They had no idea they were coming to witness Garrett and Marin's social execution. I spent Thursday shopping for the dinner party. I went to the fancy grocery store, the one we usually saved for special occasions. I selected the menu with the same meticulous care I had once put into planning our anniversary celebration. I decided to make Garrett's favorite meal, osso buco, slow braised to perfection, with a creamy risotto. But this time, I wasn't celebrating love. I was celebrating justice. Friday morning brought the first fruits of my labor. My phone rang. It was Garrett. His voice was no longer pleading, it was shaking with rage. What did you do? He yelled into the phone. Giovanni Development just fired me. They terminated my contract. That was my biggest client, Audrey. My masterpiece. I told them the truth, I replied calmly, sipping my morning coffee. I thought they deserved to know what kind of man they were employing. You destroyed my career. That project was going to make my career. You destroyed your career, Garrett, when you decided to live a double life. You destroyed it when you slept with my best friend. I just made sure the right people found out about it. Audrey, please, his voice cracked, the anger replaced by a sudden, pathetic desperation. I have a daughter to support now. I need that job. My salary. The irony was so thick, so delicious, I almost choked on it. You should have thought about supporting your daughter 3 years ago, Garrett. But don't worry, I added sweetly. The state will make sure you support her now. Whether you have a job or not. I hung up on his sputtering protests and immediately called Ms. Bennett. Garrett's been fired from his biggest client, I reported, a grim satisfaction in my voice. How does that affect our divorce proceedings? It could actually work in your favor, Ms. Bennett said, a hint of admiration in her tone. If his income drops significantly, he'll have less ability to fight for assets. He can't claim he can afford a lengthy court battle. And if he can't pay child support, the state will come after him even harder. Good work, Audrey. Good, I said. What about the DNA test? I filed a motion to compel this morning. Given the circumstances, and the fact that the Child Support Enforcement Agency is now involved, I think we'll get it approved quickly. He can't run from this. Everything was falling into place. Perfectly. Friday afternoon, I got a call from my sister, Corinne. Audrey. I just heard about Garrett. Tom ran into Nolan at the club. Is it true? Word was already spreading. Exactly as I'd planned. I'm better than okay, Corinne, I told her, my voice clear and strong. I'm free. I can't believe he did this to you, she fumed. And with Marin. I never liked her, you know. There was always something fake about her. I almost smiled. Corinne had never mentioned disliking Marin before, not once. But people love to rewrite history when a scandal breaks. Will you come to my dinner party tomorrow night? I asked. I'm telling everyone at once. I don't want to keep repeating this horrible story. Of course. I'll be there. Do you need help with anything? Just bring your appetite, I said. And maybe a taste for drama. Saturday evening arrived crisp and clear. I'd spent the day preparing for my guests, cooking Garrett's favorite meal with a bitter, satisfying irony. This was going to be his last supper in our social circle. It might as well be memorable. The guests arrived promptly at 7. Corinne and her husband Tom. Our college friends Marcus and Jennifer. Nolan, Garrett's now former business partner, and his wife, Susan. My work colleague, Grace, and several others. A jury of our peers. Notably absent, of course, were Garrett and Marin. I hadn't invited them, but I knew they'd hear about it. Oh, they would hear about every last detail. Where's Garrett? Jennifer asked as I served cocktails, her brow furrowed with concern. Is he working late again? Garrett won't be joining us, I said with a mysterious, sad little smile. I'll explain everything over dinner. The conversation flowed easily at first. Everyone was on their best behavior, sensing the tension beneath the surface. They were curious about my important news, but they were too polite to press. They complimented the food, the wine, asked about work, shared harmless gossip about mutual friends. I let the suspense build. I was the director of this little play, and I would choose the timing for the final act. I waited until dessert was served, a decadent chocolate lava cake, to drop my bomb. I stood up at the head of the table, tapping my wine glass with a spoon. The chatter died down immediately. I want to thank you all for coming tonight, I began, my voice steady, my gaze sweeping across their expectant faces. Your friendship has meant everything to me over the years. You are my family. Which is why I wanted you to hear this from me, personally. The table was completely silent. Everyone leaned forward. Garrett and I are getting a divorce. Gasps and murmurs of shock rippled around the table. Jennifer's wineglass hit the table with a sharp clink. Nolan's face went pale. I know this comes as a surprise, I continued, letting the shock settle in. It certainly surprised me. Especially when I discovered that my husband of 7 years has been having an affair with my best friend, Marin, for the past 4 years. The silence that followed was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop. But that's not the most shocking part, I said, my voice unwavering, calm, and filled with a terrible sadness that I was performing with Oscar-worthy skill. The most shocking part is that they have a 3-year-old daughter together. Little Delia. The little girl I've been babysitting, buying gifts for, treating like my own niece. She's actually my husband's child. I could see the wheels turning in their minds. They were all remembering. All the times they'd seen Garrett with Delia, all the family gatherings where he'd played the doting uncle. Every little detail was now clicking into place for them, forming a horrifying picture. I found out at our anniversary party, I continued, my voice breaking just enough to be convincing. When Delia called Garrett Daddy in front of everyone. Apparently, keeping their secret became too much for a 3-year-old. Corinne was openly crying now. Grace looked furious on my behalf. Nolan was staring at his plate like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. I wanted you all to know the truth, because I know Garrett will probably try to spin this story. He'll make excuses, he'll claim it was a mistake, he'll try to minimize what he did. But I have evidence. I let my gaze drift over to Nolan. Bank records showing he's been supporting them with our money for years. Receipts for expensive gifts he bought Delia while telling me we couldn't afford things. Documentation of his lies going back years. Marcus finally found his voice. Audrey. I'm so sorry. We had no idea. Of course you didn't, I said, a tear finally escaping and tracing a path down my cheek. They were very careful. Very sneaky. Very good at making me look like the fool who couldn't see what was happening in her own marriage. I sat back down, taking a slow sip of my wine. I just wanted you to know the truth before the rumors start flying. Garrett has already been fired from Giovanni Development. The state is pursuing him for back child support. And I am taking him for everything he's worth in the divorce. Good, Grace said fiercely from across the table. He deserves every last bit of it. The rest of the evening was spent dissecting Garrett and Marin's betrayal. My friends rallied around me, a chorus of outrage and support. They shared their own suspicions they'd never dared to voice. They promised to cut all ties with the cheating couple. By the time everyone left, hugging me tightly at the door and promising to call tomorrow, Garrett and Marin's social destruction was complete. Word would spread through our entire circle like wildfire within days. They'd be pariahs. Outcasts. The couple everyone whispered about and no one wanted to be associated with. As I cleaned up the dishes, stacking them in the dishwasher, I felt a deep, profound satisfaction settling in my chest. This was just the beginning. Garrett thought he'd lost everything when he got fired. He had no idea how much more he was about to lose. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I knew who it was. You're destroying innocent people. Delia doesn't deserve this. Marin. She'd gotten a new phone number, probably hoping to avoid the fallout. I typed back, my thumbs moving quickly. Delia deserves a father who isn't a liar and a cheat. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with my husband, Marin. Her response came quickly. Garrett loves you. He made a mistake, but he loves you. Don't destroy him over one mistake. One mistake. For years of lies, deception, gaslighting, and betrayal was one mistake. I typed back 2 words. Watch me. Then I blocked the number and went to bed, a real smile on my face for the first time in days, already planning my next move. The war was far from over. Monday morning brought news that made my coffee taste like victory. Ms. Bennett called with an update that had me smiling for the first time in what felt like an eternity. The DNA test has been fast-tracked, she said, her voice crisp and efficient. Garrett's lawyer advised him to comply rather than fight it. A smart move, considering the alternative was a court order and looking even more guilty. How long until we have the results? I asked, stirring my coffee, the spoon clinking against the ceramic mug. 72 hours. But Audrey, there's something else. The Child Support Enforcement Agency moved faster than even I expected. They've already frozen Garrett's bank accounts pending the paternity results. I set down my coffee cup, savoring the moment. All of them? Every account they could find. His personal checking, his savings, even his investment portfolio. And they've put a lien on his car. If the DNA confirms what we already know, they'll be pursuing him for 3 years of back child support, plus penalties and interest. We're likely talking about a 6-figure debt he'll owe the state and Marin. Garrett's financial destruction was happening even faster than I'd hoped. But I wasn't done with Marin yet. That afternoon, I drove to Delia's daycare, the same Sunshine daycare that Garrett had been secretly funding with my money. I'd called ahead, posing as a concerned family member. I walked in and spoke to the director, a kind-looking woman in her 50s with warm eyes. I'm Delia's aunt, I told her, my voice full of practiced concern. I was getting very good at acting. I'm helping Marin update the family's paperwork and I just need to confirm who you have listed as Delia's father on your records. The director hesitated, her smile tightening. I'm sorry, but I can only discuss that information with the parents. It's a strict privacy policy. Oh, of course, I understand completely, I said, nodding sympathetically. I paused, then added casually, as if it were an afterthought, I just want to make sure everything's in order before the custody hearing. Her eyes widened slightly. Custody hearing? I sighed dramatically, letting my shoulders slump. Oh, you haven't heard? It's just awful. Delia's parents are going through some very serious legal issues right now. A very contentious divorce is looming. I'm just trying to help sort out all the paperwork to protect Delia. It's such a mess when families fall apart, isn't it? I left the daycare knowing that within hours, the staff would be gossiping about Delia's messy family drama. Word would spread to other parents during pickup and drop-off. It would create another circle of people, a circle centered around her child and her role as a mother, who knew the truth about Marin and Garrett. Her reputation as a struggling but noble single mom would be shattered. Tuesday brought the social media phase of my campaign. I was careful. I didn't post anything directly myself that would look vindictive and desperate. Instead, I let my friends do the work for me. I'd been liking and commenting strategically on posts from the friends who had attended my dinner party. When Jennifer posted a vague status about being shocked by the people you thought you knew, I commented, sometimes the people closest to us are the best at hiding their true selves. Thank you for your support during this difficult time, Jen. It means the world. When Grace shared an article about infidelity statistics, I added a comment, so true. The betrayal is bad enough, but the years of lies that go with it are what really destroy a person's ability to trust. So grateful for my true friends right now. Each comment was carefully crafted to seem supportive and grateful, rather than bitter. But they served their purpose. They fanned the flames, keeping the story alive in people's minds, ensuring that Garrett and Marin's reputation continued to crumble into dust. Wednesday morning, Ms. Bennett called with the news I'd been waiting for. The DNA results are in, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. It's a 99.999% match. Garrett is unequivocally Amanda's father. The Child Support Agency is moving immediately to garnish any future wages and begin the process of seizing assets to cover his back payments. She paused. What about his business partnership with Nolan? That, she said, and now I could definitely hear the smile, is where things get interesting. Nolan has been calling my office all morning. Apparently, their partnership agreement has a morality clause. I smiled. A real, genuine smile. A morality clause. Of course it did. Garrett had insisted on it when they formed the firm, to protect their company's image and integrity. Nolan wants him out, Ms. Bennett continued. He wants to dissolve the partnership and buy Garrett out, but he's worried about the legal implications. What did you tell him? That he should consult his own lawyer. But between you and me, Audrey, I think Garrett is about to lose more than just his marriage and his biggest client. He's about to lose his entire company. That afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. I was in the kitchen, wiping down the counters, when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Maren standing on my doorstep. She looked haggard and desperate. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Delia wasn't with her. "We need to talk," she said, her voice thin and reedy. I considered slamming the door in her face. It's what she deserved. But curiosity, and a desire to see her squirm, won out. 5 minutes, I said, my voice cold. She followed me into the living room, perching nervously on the edge of the couch where she had sat so many times before, laughing and drinking wine with me as my friend. "You have to stop this," she said without preamble, her hands twisting in her lap. "Garrett's lost his job. His accounts are frozen. Now Nolan is talking about dissolving their partnership. You're destroying him." "I'm not destroying him," I replied calmly, standing with my arms crossed. "I'm just making sure people know who he really is. The truth has a way of doing the rest." "Delia needs her father," she pleaded. "If you ruin him completely, how is he supposed to support her? The state is demanding a huge sum for his back child support, money we don't have." The irony was so breathtaking it almost made me laugh. Delia needed her father 4 years ago, Maren. And 3 years ago. And 2 years ago. Where was your concern for his ability to support her then? When you were happily cashing checks funded by my salary? Maren's eyes filled with tears. The same tears she had used to manipulate me for years. "I know we hurt you, Audrey. I know what we did was wrong, but Delia is innocent in all of this." "You're right," I said, my voice softening for a fraction of a second before hardening again. "Delia is innocent. Which is why she deserves better than to be raised by parents who are liars and cheaters." "Garrett was going to leave you for me," she burst out, the words tumbling out in a desperate rush. I stared at her. "He was," she insisted, her voice rising. "He was going to tell you everything after your anniversary. We had it all planned out. He was just waiting for the right time." "You're lying." "I'm not. He loves me, Audrey. He loves Delia. He only stayed with you all this time because he felt guilty, because he didn't know how to tell you without hurting you." The words hit me like a series of physical blows. This wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a plan. My entire life, my marriage, was just an obstacle they were waiting to clear away. They had been planning my replacement. But I kept my expression neutral. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. "If that's true," I said slowly, "then I guess I did him a favor by finding out first. Now he's free to be with you, without the burden of all that guilt." Maren's face crumpled. "You don't understand. My job is in jeopardy. People at work are talking. Delia's daycare is asking questions. You're not just hurting Garrett. You're hurting us, too." "Good," I said simply. She stared at me as if I'd slapped her. "This isn't you, Audrey. You're not cruel." "You're right," I said, taking a step toward her. The old Audrey wasn't cruel. The old Audrey was trusting and naive and stupid enough to believe her best friend and her husband were good people. But that Audrey is gone. You and Garrett killed her. I stood up, signaling that our conversation was over. You have 2 minutes left. She stood too, desperation making her voice shrill. What do you want? Money? A public apology? What will it take for you to stop this? I looked her right in the eye. I want you to suffer, I said quietly. I want you to lose everything, just like I did. I want you to know what it feels like to have your entire life destroyed by the people you trusted most. We never meant. Get out, my voice was ice. And don't you ever come back to my house again. After she left, I poured myself a large glass of wine and sat in my garden, the evening air cool on my skin. Garrett had been planning to leave me anyway. Their betrayal wasn't just about sex or even a secret child. It was about my complete and total replacement. The knowledge should have hurt more, but instead, it just poured more fuel on the fire of my rage. It made me even more determined to see this through to the bitter end. Thursday brought the final domino. David, Garrett's partner, called me personally, something he'd never done before. Audrey, I'm so sorry to bother you at home, he said, his voice strained. But I need to ask you something about Garrett. What do you want to know, David? Is it true? I mean, I've been going through our company books since this all came out, and there are some irregularities. Is it possible that he's been using company resources for personal expenses? I smiled. Garrett had been sloppy. He'd been arrogant. He'd mixed his business and personal finances, thinking no one would ever check. I couldn't say for certain, David, I said, feigning ignorance. You'd have to ask Garrett about that. I'm asking you because Garrett's not exactly trustworthy right now, David's voice was tight with anger. If he's been embezzling from the company we built together. If I were you, David, I said helpfully, I'd suggest you hire a forensic accountant. They're very good at finding financial irregularities. After I hung up, I felt a deep, profound satisfaction. Garrett hadn't just been stealing from our marriage. He'd been stealing from his business partner, too. David would find the evidence. And Garrett would face criminal charges on top of everything else. Friday afternoon, Ms. Bennett called with the final update. It's over, Audrey, she said. Garrett's agreed to all our terms. He's not fighting anymore. He gets his clothes and his personal effects. You get the house, the investments, and the majority of the liquid assets. He's also agreed to pay you spousal support for 3 years. What about his business? David is buying him out for pennies on the dollar. Garrett needs the money to pay his legal fees and the mountain of back child support he owes. He's essentially starting over with nothing. I closed my eyes, feeling a weight I didn't even know I was carrying lift from my shoulders. And Marin? I asked, one last loose end. Lost her job yesterday, Ms. Bennett said. Apparently, the nonprofits board decided she wasn't a good fit for their family values mission after all. Perfect. That evening, I sat in my beautiful house, my house now, in every sense of the word, and I opened a bottle of the best champagne. Not to celebrate love this time, but to celebrate justice. My phone buzzed with one final text from Garrett. I hope you're happy now. I typed back a single sentence. I'm getting there. Then I blocked his number for good and went through my phone, deleting every single photo of him, erasing him from my life, 1 pixel at a time. The morning sun streamed through the windows of my home office, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air as I put the finishing touches on my latest project. It had been a year. A year since my world fell apart, and a year since I started painstakingly putting it back together, piece by piece, but stronger this time, and built on a foundation of my own making. I'd started a consulting business. A niche one. I help other women navigate contentious divorce proceedings, particularly cases involving infidelity and financial deception. And my business was thriving. Apparently, there were a lot of women out there who needed someone in their corner who understood betrayal and knew how to fight back. My doorbell rang, and I opened it to find a delivery man holding a large, beautiful bouquet of flowers, lilies and roses. The card was from my newest client, a woman whose husband had been embezzling from their joint business for years to fund his gambling addiction. We had just won her a massive settlement. "Thank you for helping me get my life back," the card read. I smiled, a real, genuine smile, as I arranged the flowers in a vase on my kitchen counter. Helping other women reclaim their power, their finances, their lives, it had become my passion. Each case was different, but the deep, satisfying feeling of watching cheaters and liars finally face the consequences of their actions never got old. My phone rang. Ms. Bennett's name appeared on the screen. We still kept in touch. "Good news, Audrey," she said without preamble. "I thought you'd want to know. Garrett's been sentenced." I sat down, my heart giving a little flutter. "And?" 6 months in jail for embezzlement. Nolan's testimony, along with the evidence from the forensic accountant, was particularly damaging. He'll be out in 4 with good behavior, but he'll have a criminal record. His career as an architect is over. She paused. And Maren is still unemployed. Word is she's moved back in with her parents in Ohio. Garrett's child support payments, which are being garnished from what little he can make doing odd jobs, barely cover Delia's basic needs. I felt a flicker of something. It might have been sympathy for Delia, the innocent child caught in the middle of this toxic mess, but it passed quickly. The little girl was better off knowing the truth about her parents now than growing up surrounded by their web of lies. "There's something else," Ms. Bennett continued, and I could hear the humor in her voice. "Garrett's lawyer reached out last week. He wanted to know if you'd be willing to write a character reference for his sentencing hearing, to speak to his better nature. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud, a full, hearty laugh. "You're kidding me. What did you tell him?" "I told him you'd consider it for a non-negotiable fee of $50,000, paid in advance." "And?" "Strangely," she said dryly, "they declined. If you're still listening to this point, please do me a favor and like this video, and comment the number 1 below. It lets me know that you're amazing, and I understand that you're right here with me on this whole journey. Your support is a tremendous encouragement that cheers me on. Please, comment with a number 1 so I can see you, and now, let me tell you the rest of my story." After hanging up with Ms. Bennett, I walked through my house, admiring the changes I'd made. New furniture, a fresh coat of paint in calming shades of blue and gray. The family photos on the wall no longer included Garrett's lying face, they were pictures of me with Corinne, my parents, my friends, my real family. It was truly my house now. My sanctuary. A home built on truth instead of deception. I know what some of you might be thinking. The old Audrey certainly would have. She would have felt guilty about Garrett's downfall. She would have wondered if she'd gone too far, if she'd been too harsh, if she'd destroyed too much. But the old Audrey had been weak. She'd been naive. She believed in fairy tales and happy endings and the inherent goodness of people who didn't deserve an ounce of her trust. The new Audrey, the woman I am today, knows better. She understands that sometimes, the only way to get justice is to take it for yourself, with both hands. She knows that people who systematically destroy others' lives deserve to have their own lives dismantled in return. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister, Corinne. "Lunch today? I have some fresh gossip about you-know-who." I typed back instantly. "Can't wait to hear it." The gossip network I'd so carefully cultivated was still providing me with regular updates on Garrett and Maren's continued downfall. It was petty, perhaps. But after what they did to me, I felt like I had earned the right to be a little petty. As I got ready for lunch, choosing a bright, cheerful dress from my closet, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. I looked different now. Stronger. Sharper. There was a confidence in my eyes that hadn't been there before. The naive young woman who had planned that perfect anniversary party was gone forever, replaced by someone who knew her own worth, and who would never, ever let anyone diminish it again. Some people might call what I did cruel or vindictive. They might say I went too far, that revenge was beneath me. But those people have never been betrayed by the two people they trusted most in the entire world. They've never had the horrifying realization that their entire life, their entire marriage, was built on a foundation of lies. They've never felt the crushing weight of knowing they'd been played for a fool by the very people who were supposed to love and protect them. I have no regrets. Not a single one. Garrett and Maren made their choices, and now they are living with the consequences. Just as I am living with mine. The difference is, my consequences include freedom, financial security, a thriving new career, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that justice, in its own brutal way, has been served. Their consequences include poverty, social exile, a criminal record, and the knowledge that their own selfish actions destroyed not just my life, but their own as well. As I locked my front door and headed out to meet Corinne, I smiled. It was a beautiful day, and I had a beautiful life ahead of me. One built on truth instead of lies. Strength instead of naivety. And justice instead of blind trust. The old Audrey might have forgiven them eventually. She might have found it in her heart to move on without destroying them in return. But the old Audrey is gone. And I am so much better for it. The war was over, and I had won. Completely. Garrett and Maren's betrayal had cost them everything. Their reputations, their careers, their financial security, their promotion prospects, and their place in the community we had all once shared. Meanwhile, I had emerged from the rubble stronger, wealthier, and wiser. I'd learned a hard lesson: sometimes the best revenge isn't just moving on and living well. Sometimes, it's making sure the people who wronged you pay the full price for their choices. As I drove toward the restaurant, my thoughts drifted, for a moment, to Delia. She would be 4 now. Old enough to start asking questions. Why does Daddy live in a different place? Why does Mommy cry so much? Why did we have to move in with Grandma and Grandpa? Someday, she would learn the truth. She would learn about how her parents' selfishness and deceit had destroyed multiple lives. She would understand that actions have consequences, that betrayal comes with a price, and that some people will fight back, hard, when you try to destroy them. It would be a valuable lesson for her to learn. After all, the truth always comes out in the end. And when it does, the people who've been living lies have nowhere left to hide. I'd made sure of that. The game was over. And I had won every single round. Thank you all for listening to my story. It means so much to know you're here. If you've ever been through something like this, or if my story resonated with you, please leave a comment below. I read every single one. And please, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories. Your support helps more than you know. Stay strong, everyone. And so, this story stands not just as a tale of betrayal and justice, but as a powerful reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. It teaches us that even in the face of the deepest pain, we have the strength to rise, rebuild, and reclaim our lives. Audrey's journey wasn't just about revenge, it was about rediscovering her worth, finding her voice, and refusing to let deceit define her future. It is a testament to the fact that sometimes, the hardest battles we face are the ones that shape us into our strongest selves. Life has a way of testing us, often through the people we trust the most. But through these trials, we learn the importance of self-respect, boundaries, and the courage to stand up for what we deserve. This story shows us that while forgiveness is a virtue, it is also okay to demand accountability and to prioritize our own healing and happiness above all else. It's a lesson in self-love and the transformative power of taking control of our own narrative. What did this story teach you about resilience and self-worth? Share your thoughts below, or leave a good if this reflection resonated with you. Remember, your story matters, and your strength is limitless.